something that I should probably share. When I was in pharmacology, there were a number of things that we were studying that absolutely didn't make sense, and one of those was hypertension medications. They said that, you know, what happened was, well, first of all, they give you the indications of hypertension and why it's, you know, harmful to the body. We find that when there's a blood pressure of 140 over 100 or something like that, then that's of concern because it means that there's a higher likelihood of stroke or heart attack or cardiovascular disease. And I get that. You know, there might be plaquing in the arteries. There might be just a whole bunch of things going on and making the blood pressure high. It could also be stress, could also be radiation. So, but high blood pressure makes the heart work harder to do just basically the same thing. So they tell you to work out and everything like that. But they also tell you to take hypertension medications, and then we went into a pretty deep study of those. So what I learned was that we can measure the efficacy of the hypertensive by using the sphygmometer, which is the blood pressure machine, right? You go, and what that cuff does is it cuts off your blood so that the blood can't go through. That means that's the strength of your heart pushing the blood, you know, through your veins, and that's called the systolic pressure. And then on the return, that's capillaries on the way out. And then on return is the venous pressure, which is there's a thump, thump, and that's the return. When we let it out and we hear the heartbeat starting to happen again, that is called the diastolic pressure, and that means that this is the return flow to the heart. So what winds up happening is we can measure how much pressure there is in the heart, and obviously when it goes high, people get sick, and we want to fix that. Okay, so then here's the proposition that was made by Western pharmaceuticals. They said that with these hypertensive medications, we have a class called Vasodilators. And what they basically do is they increase the diameter of venous system. So I asked the professor, I've got a question here. So high blood pressure is like having a bicycle tire with too much air in it, right? Yes, that's exactly right. So what you're proposing with these vasodilators is that you actually increase the diameter of the tire so that the air inside the tire does not measure so high, because you've basically given it more volume for that same fixed amount of air to fit. And he said, that's true. I said, what does decreasing the diameter of the venous system do to the elasticity of the capillaries and the veins? Does it break apart clots that might maybe lead to strokes or heart attack? Is there overall a danger in the body has its perfect size for all of our aortas, veins, arteries, and everything? Is there a danger to making these things larger? And so Dr. Jacobs said, well, that's the reason we have clinical tests. A lot of what we learned in pharmacology is, FDA, we have clinical phases. A small number of people, higher risk, less to live for. Maybe they get paid more. It might be $200. They might be prisoners. I don't know. But those tend to have a lot of side effects. So they tune in, they figure out, oh, it was the curare that killed him. And then they go through another one. And this normally takes 10 years or longer to create a vaccine or a drug. FDA, typically you're going to budget about $1 billion in development for a drug. And that's why these drugs are so expensive, because of the approval process, which is pretty amazing right now, because under the new vaccines, the approval process is under warp speed. The cost is very, very low. And the second biggest cost, and I'm saying this because I am a person with a degree in pharmacology, the second biggest cost is, of course, medical liability for damage or injury, which now has been legislated out in the United States, where because of the urgency of all these people dying around you with COVID that they are absolving insurance companies from liability for any damage done as a result of you taking one of their vaccines. So they put anything in it that you could sue them. It's, there's a law now that you can't sue us. So, but the law also says that you must take it. So I'm getting off a tiny bit, but I'm really not, because what I want to talk about is pharmacology. So I said, so basically what you do is you increase the diameter of the tube, the pressure goes down, and then you use the blood pressure machine and go, aha, now we're down to 120/80. But really you didn't fix anything, you just increased the diameter of the container. And he said, well, that's one way to look at it. Like, you didn't solve the affliction in the system. Now I'll go to the second thing, which I thought was just the most crazy thing that I'd ever heard. And we're talking about antidepressants. And there are a class of antidepressants that inhibit serotonin from being reuptaken into the nerve endings, the axiom of the nerve. So the nerve endings kind of look like this, right? And there are walls where the neurotransmitters go between the axiom and at the synapse. So these little neurotransmitters go across, and they include serotonin. But what this reuptake inhibitors, these SSRIs, do, they inhibit the uptake of serotonin so that they float around in this little space between the connections, the nerve connections. In other words, the way that happens is they thicken the wall between the nerve connections at the synapses, whatever you want to call them, potato. They thicken the wall. They decrease the permeability of these neurotransmitters going across. Okay? So you have now a dull mind. And people who are on Paxil, they say, my highs aren't as high and my lows aren't as low. That's because you're being zombified. Because what happens in that class of neurotransmitters, reuptake inhibitors, and this happens with epinephrine, with Wellbutrin, they play with different things to they say keep these neurotransmitters in rich supply in between where they should be sucked up and used in nerve transmission. Of course, serotonin is the happy thing, so to keep that floating around where it doesn't enter the brain is just a really interesting thing. So I asked, well, how exactly does that work? If you're basically muting the signal of the entire brain so that it cannot transmit signals, the neurotransmitters cannot cross these gaps, how does that decrease depression? And he said, we don't know. We just know it works. Well, there you have it. So you go back from that, and we talk about synthetics. And this is why I've become such a fan of shungite, because synthetics kill everything. Anything that is made by man kills anything that is made by nature. That's 100%. I mean, look at my house here. It's wood floors. There's a couch there they say it's leather. Doesn't seem like leather to me, but if it was leather, and there was some cow grazing in a pasture, maybe milking its calf, and then all of a sudden, and then they take the skin and they make a chair for you to sit in, or a glove, or a chair for your whatever, a nice coat. There's a tree that used to put out 2,000 tons of converting carbon dioxide into fresh oxygen. Maybe it provided a shade for a small family of deer. But it was a beautiful tree. It was a gorgeous tree. And it took, do you know how long it takes a tree to grow that tall? Maybe a foot a year. So you take a 30-foot tree. It took 30 years for it to grow, bloom, drop, if it's conifer or deciduous, drop, cones or whatever. And be this part of this gorgeous forest that you can look out. And yet, we whack them all down so we can take that tree and turn it into a telephone pole which will then hold up electronic wire for generations to come, because we know that the xylem and the bark in the trees are extremely rugged. They're very steadfast. They're made to basically not be cut down. What I'm saying is that anything man touches dies. You can see this in anything, anywhere. Man's interaction with the natural earth kills it. And the reason that is because anything that is synthetic spins in a counter direction on a quantum level opposite of what nature does. Everything in nature spins in a positive direction. Everything. Even alternating direct current electricity, because that's just what happens in lightning and things like that, static electricity, that is all direct current. What is synthetic is alternating current, where the magnetic waves go like this, like that, like this, like that, like this, like that, and it wreaks havoc on a system that's used to having the spin going in one direction only. And so what happens is you've got anything synthetic spinning like this, anything in nature spinning like that, and what these synthetics do is they go into areas of the body that maybe can be spun in the other direction. This is what causes cancer, for example. Cancer only exists in an anaerobic environment. This is why they test for cancer using a PET scan. PET scans look for tissues that don't have oxygen. So those are the things that happen in synthetic environments. And what I found most remarkable about pharmacology is that we were creating synthetics to battle the affliction of synthetics. I mean, there was no high blood pressure before modern man. There was scant heart disease, now the leading killer in civilization, soon to be taken over by COVID. But heart disease and cancer completely skyrocketed with the advent of the modern white civilization. We have the First Nations, the original Native Americans who walked around with moccasins. They did not have diabetes. There was no such thing as diabetes. There was no such thing as these elevated risks of heart disease or cancer, and that is because their feet were connected to the grounding benefits of Mother Earth. When we started to make synthetic shoes, synthetic, spinning opposite direction as nature intended, we were not able to ground our positive charge. These positive charges are the things that happen when you, say for example, touch a piece of metal and you get shocked, or you touch a person after rubbing your feet on your most lovely of all things, rayon, synthetic thing under your feet, which is rayon carpet. Like that's plastic, petroleum, rayon, spinning the other directions under your feet, and then you're above the ground, so you're getting a lot of positive ions from being above the ground, whereas Earth is neutral grounding. The Earth is negative ground. So this is why it's been so popularized lately among, truly well-read physicians that understand the benefits of basically bare feet on grass, bare feet on earth. Because what it does is it allows the body to ground the positive ions, the discharge, and so that we're not holding positive charge. And that's those positive charges that actually cause free radicals, and those free radicals cause the diabetes and the cancer. And all these things you can go ahead and look up on the internet because they're extremely interesting. But what I find most interesting is that I wound up with a deep training in pharmacology, and pharmacology being the fighting of synthetic afflictions to natural systems by use of synthetics. I can't even tell you how silly that is. It's like the little old lady who lived in there was a lady who swallowed a fly. I don't know why she swallowed a fly. I think she'll die. She swallowed a fly to eat the bee, something like that, where it's just like you have a problem that you created, And you're trying to use your dumb tools to fix those problems. Synthetics, in any measure, if you're just like going, hey, um, we find that a diet high in flax, no, in fiber, we find that people who have a diet high in fiber have, lower blood pressure and less cardio disease. Okay, so what people do is they take natural foods and then they pull the flax out of it and then they stick them into your Wheaties with extra flax. What you don't understand is the reason that people are healthier is because they're eating natural, non-synthetic foods that have flax, which is natural. And in eating the flax, there's all these multivitamins, there's all of these fiber and compounds and these beautifully, as we know, organic things. But I like to turn things like and say organic because then they'll just go, oh, well, we have a certified organic farm, and then we're going to take it and we're going to package it this way and that way. The bottom line is anything natural spins in a positive direction. Anything synthetic spins in a negative direction, especially EMFs. EMFs are nothing but negative spin. So when your body, when you wear earrings that are little antennas or metal fillings that are filled with, these anything dental, fluoride and these compounds, these metals that go into your teeth, they seep and get into your liver, making your liver heavily metallicized. All of that does is it makes you more of an antenna for the negative spin. And that's why it is such a crazy thing to be living in this society, because they constantly keep adding to the negative spin. Our grandfathers did not have cell phones, so we don't have a full generation of information, long-term, large-scale study about what happens when you hold a phone to your head. We do now know that there's a lot of incidents of glioma, brain disease, because, and it typically tends to be on the side that people were holding their head. It said that that's how John McCain died. The brain cancer was that type of disease. Regardless, we are being bombarded with new synthetics that we never saw before. And it's the synthetic things that we need to be aware of, because they are completely not natural to anything natural, which is why things die whenever they're in the presence of synthetic influence. Natural things die. And we say, oh no, we're actually really good with that. We've been able to save the rare whale. Well, how did the whale become unsafe anyway? Could it have been petroleum? Could it have been dumping of cruise ships? With thousands of people dumping their stuff out in the sea? Could it have been, how many different things made all of those things, extinct? Deforestation of the Amazon forests, things like that. So that's my thing, and that's why when I started my shungite business and why it's been so helpful for me, because there's a song that it was called Sugarloaf, and it was called Green-Eyed Lady. You ought to listen to it. It's a really cool song. I was teaching my daughter the drums on it because it's really good drums. Very, very tight band. But anyway, they were talking about, there's one line in it, and it says, soothing every raging wave that comes. And I couldn't help but think how that's such a great explanation for shungite. It goes, no, they'll cut on YouTube. Soothing every drop of rain that comes. Soothing every raging wave that comes. Because what happens is you get this raging wave coming at you of synthetic energy. And what it does is spins in the opposite direction. When you put shungite in that, being that these are all carbon-60 fullerene balls, massive bond affinity with nothing to hang on to except to radiate that spin, the spin that occurs inside that aromatic ring, that benzene ring that has double bonds swapping with single bonds and doing it in the direction of the universe, sending out all of these waves of positive light energy, and you get them all together in an elite rock, 97% fullerene, spinning out all kinds of positive spin energy, so all of this negative spin comes, and then it's just diluted. You know, people say, oh, it has amazing water filtration things. It doesn't take out the sediment in the water. What it does is it takes away the harm of the synthetic spin that occurs in the toxins within the water. Same thing with your bloodstream, same thing with everything else. And with the EMFs are crazy negative spin, and the way that shungite works with that is that it counteracts that positive spin. Now that spin, by the way, you know, a lot of people here in Kelowna have been having just really bad headaches. They're having spotted rashes that run along nerve lines, and that's nerve activation from the elevated microwaves. They're having very dry eyes. They're having fertility problems. Well, the eyes and the fertility problems come because with the advent of the radiation, it actually increases the tissue temperature of the body. The slowest moving liquids in the body are in the testes and in the eyeballs. The aqueous and the vitreous humor of the eyeballs are very gel-like. They do exchange, but it's not like blood, it's not like water. It just moves very slowly. And because it moves very slowly, it's not like a radiator in a car where you'll, you know, just like cool everything down. It actually heats up and stays heated. So people find that their vision is becoming blurry. They're becoming more nearsighted. They're becoming more nearsighted because the eyeball is actually getting larger. And in myopia, when your eyeball becomes longer between the lens and the retina, it actually focuses in front of the retina, causing nearsightedness. And that's basically what winds up happening. And that's why we put glasses to try to move that focal point all the way back to the retina. When your eye is increasing, this is gross, due to heat, that's why you're becoming nearsighted. And that's why your eyes are dry and itchy. And the ringing in the ears, the tinnitus, the heart having a hard time breathing. You'll find that when you're in a high radiation zone, you do have a hard time breathing, and that's because there's a molecule called a porphyrin. And the porphyrin is a luminescent molecule. It's very, very sensitive to radiation, so it will oscillate. It's like a crystal in a way, where you hit it with a certain radiation and then it'll go, whoa, I'm feeling this. And the problem with that is that as it's vibrating, it's supposed to attach to iron and create heme for hemoglobin. Those two would then bind to oxygen and transport it around your body. When it can't do that, now you've got oxygen demand, and simulates elevation sickness, and that's what winds up happening with that. None of this is good for your body. So I feel fine. And the reason that is because I do a lot of things. I'm going to wear a lot of shungite. I also have, wherever I know that there's high radiation situations, I always have a lot of mylar sheeting. Let's see if I have some here. No, I don't. Oh, yes, I do. Mylar sheeting. This is like those survival blanket kind of things. And you can, it's really cool when you like do your meter and you put electronic behind it, and then you see, wow, this really shields everything. I got this idea from when I opened my laptop to change the memory chips on it. I was like, wow, they've got this really thin sheet of aluminum foil. Well, obviously, that's to keep the motherboard from getting fried by static electricity. And then so I thought, I wonder if this is any good at keeping out radiation. And lo and behold, it's extremely effective for that. So is aluminum foil. So, tinfoil hats. That's why they started the mockery years ago, before people would actually think, oh, maybe a tinfoil hat might make me feel better on some of my dizzier days. But The thing about Mylar is it will kill your signal. So, and you don't want to wrap it around your Wi-Fi transmitter, because what will happen is that it keeps heat in and it'll completely fry the electronics in it. So, it is good for creating like a Faraday cage. I've got a canopy bed, and what I do is I've just draped down the Mylar around it, and then I sleep with shungite all around. And, you know, have not been sick all through this COVID thing. Every once in a while, I can feel it. Like the symptomology that comes is A, ringing in the ears, B, feels like someone threw salt in my eyes and they're very itchy and scratchy. C, I can feel my breathing go higher up in the chest and more rapid heartbeat. So what I do is I make note of that. It doesn't affect me, but I can tell that it's there. Then I pull out my meter and go, oh yeah, we got a lot of radiation going around. For some reason, it's extremely high in downtown Kelowna at the moment, debilitating high. So toxically high. I don't know why it's like that. Couldn't tell you, but it's there. It's definitely there. So, but you know, having these things that can shield you on a day-to-day basis will not only keep you alive, keep you free from glioma, keep you free from sterility, allow you to get out of bed with more energy. But this all, you know, this all comes into this kind of category of man-made things. Anything synthetic, remember, it spins in the opposite direction. You wouldn't want to take a card, burn it, and smell it, would you? You know that that would poison you. Why would you poison? Why would that poison you? You can take a leaf, a tobacco leaf, and burn it, and yeah, it doesn't poison you, or you know, just whatever, anything. But anything synthetic, when it's released to the body, whether it's released very, very slowly or set on fire and melted and you smell the petroleum, it will kill you. Anything synthetic, long-term exposure is going to help you to die sooner and live less healthy when you're around it. So the bottom line is do you want to eat Cheerios with flax or just eat anything natural? You know, my daughter was like, Dad, why are you eating a bell pepper for lunch? That's like, I like bell peppers. You're right. I should have some cherry tomatoes with that. When you start to understand the vibrational energy of the consistent positive spin, then you yourself alone will guide yourself to the answers that you need. It'll just come naturally. You don't need to read it from books. It'll just come on your own. It's a practice, you know. You do it. But anyway, so I know a lot of people out there are suffering, having a really hard time. And I want to tell you that's not your fault. There are a lot of synthetic influences that are making you tired. There are a lot of societal influences that are making you feel like a loser when you're not. Nobody's a loser. I'm looking out at some deer out my window. I'm not looking at any of those deers and thinking they're a loser. In fact, deer are a great mentor for me because I love how they don't know when it's the end of the month. They're not worried about their mortgage or their bills. They're not worried about saving up for a healthy retirement. They don't even know how long they're going to live. They don't even really know when they're going to die. The only time they get worried is when there's a sound behind them and their ear goes back. Then they worry, then they move. But until then, la-di-da-di-da-di-da. And that's the way we should all be. That's the way of nature. Okay, that's a half-hour video. Just wanted to get that out there. I know some of my friends are hurting. I'm sorry that you are. I can give you a little of some tips to maybe understand that these afflictions are not you. They don't come from you. They come from someone else who is putting them on you. And maybe not a bad time to investigate those things and create your own kind of safe haven. Okay? Thanks for watching. Subscribe. Every once in a while I feel like doing these videos. Thanks for watching.